Unfortunately, we don't have, but so remember this title, it's Yoga Consciousness in Ancient Mysteries. So I think we're going to get...
Mysteries, ancient mystery religions.
In Ancient Mystery Religions.
Yeah.
Tony, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you very much for having me.
It's my honour to have you, sir. So I understand that you say your book was inspired by vision.
Yeah, it was. I was hearing this 14-year-old boy with reading difficulties read, and we didn't have books for people with special needs at that time.
You was a teacher, weren't you?
Yeah. Yeah. And he was reading this book, this story to me, and suddenly came into my mind this pillar, this ancient-looking pillar, was slightly conical and square, and it honed on each of the four sides, and it said that each of these stories had 4 different meanings. And one was to do with the senses, that's like the body, one was to do with the mind, the mental part, one was to do with the intellect, and one was called the transcendent, that's outside the body, you could say. That's the underlying strata of life, you could say. And that's really what my book's about. Mm.
So this was a vision that you had?
Yeah, yeah.
And that got you into writing the book?
It didn't actually, no. It got me into looking at different stories to see if they worked on different stories, because it just worked on this story that this boy was reading at the time.
Right.
And I didn't know if it was true, because I wasn't even interested in this thing at the time. It just came into my head like that. Yeah. And I thought, well, I better try it out and see if it works on other stories.
Now, that was some years ago, wasn't it?
A long, long time ago, 73, believe it or not.
73, so it's been a long time since 73.
I know.
Why did it take so long to write the book?
Well, I was just busy teaching, but I'm one of those writers that only writes when I'm inspired. Mm. I know it sounds very lazy.
No.
But I find that if I just write from my mind, it's rubbish. It's clever rubbish, quite honestly.
Okay.
But when you tap into this other source and you get a real inspiration, it's as if someone else doing it for you.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's much better.
Totally agree with
that. Yeah, yeah. And I only write when I get that. Mm. That's basically why I did it. Mm. And I think the other thing was, there was a part of the book that I knew nothing about, that some greater being than me had to put me in touch with me before I could do it.
Mm. Durga.
Yes.
What's this?
Well, good question, because I didn't know about Durga either. I went to India in 2001, and I visited his temple with about 30 other people. And there were 3 altars in this thing. It's called the Hanuman Temple in Allahabad in India. And the main one is Hanuman, it's a monkey god. And on the left was another altar called Rama and Sita. And on the right was this other one I didn't know anything about at all. And for some reason, the guy was really talking to these other people about this one I didn't know anything about at all. And I went over there, you know, sometime later, I don't know what, I got preoccupied with this other thing, and I just saw this image of this goddess, and I loved her immediately. Hmm? And I didn't just love her, I adored her. And I know it sounds unbelievable, but I started speaking in Sanskrit, and I've never learnt Sanskrit at all.
Right.
Never. I've never even hardly heard of it, let alone speak it.
How did you know it was Sanskrit?
Because when I was coming up with these hymns, apparently they're hymns, there's a couple of ladies went to this priest and said, "What's he talking about?" And they said, "Well, I can't believe it." He said, "It's some Westerner that's talking about esoteric and deep things that we don't even know about sometimes." They knew about Sanskrit. Then a guide who was leading our party, he wanted to find out what I was saying, because I thought it was Italian or something. I didn't know, quite honest with you. Yeah. And he saw me having this experience with Durga, and so he led me to a chai stall. That's like a spicy tea thing you get in India. It's lovely stuff, actually. Yeah. And he stood me in front of this thing. Of course, as soon as I saw it, I started again. And one of his guides, who could speak Sanskrit, listened to me. And he said, "Yes, it's definitely Sanskrit." He said, "But he said it so quickly that I can only understand about 25% of it. It's definitely Sanskrit," he said.
How did that make you feel?
Brilliant.
Brilliant.
Yeah, yeah.
There was no concern. There was no, "Am I going mad?"
No. There was some concern when I got home. All right, I thought I was going to get a divorce.
So you were married at the time. What did your wife say?
Oh, she thought I'd gone potty. Well, you know, because I go home. It's a
reasonable assumption.
I know. I go out to India for a couple of weeks, and I come back and I start worshipping goddesses and must buy flowers, must arrange fruit in mandalic patterns.
Right. So you didn't take any drugs? You didn't do any drink on the plane there?
No, didn't drink. No, nothing like that. No. In actual fact, luckily I have every day. Funnily enough. And she told me about. She put me in touch with mystery religions. I'd never heard of them. I didn't know anything about them at all. And that's the other reason I didn't write the book. I suppose she didn't want me to yet, because I wasn't ready for it.
Right.
And that's how it started.
And you're still with your wife?
Yeah. She got used to it. She got used to my strange ways now. Because I try and keep it separate if you can.
Yeah.
But only for everyday life. It's not really separate.
Has the left brain not jumped in and said, I want some explanation? Mine would.
I don't think it would, because...
Quite apart from I've got to check myself in.
If you, like, you love this goddess so much, she's the main thing in your life. I know it's boundless, really, but and therefore, sort of love transcends all boundaries, really.
Yeah.
So,
True love.
And the other thing is that she actually knows everything. It's like she's come on the show with a script. I'm only one of the actors.
Okay.
And that's the difference. So that she's always going to be right. Well, I'm going to make mistakes all the time.
I'm kind of talking to Durga right now.
Probably. Yeah. Well, in actual fact, yes, because I said this morning to her, I said, "You're going to do the show for me, don't you?" I know it sounds... I didn't want to tell you that because it sounds a bit off the wall, doesn't it?
No, this show is about you saying what you want to say. I mean, that's fine. I'm not going to...
I didn't actually said that. I said, yes, you're going to do the show today, aren't you?
And so you've written a book,
yeah.
Yoga Consciousness in Ancient Mystery Religions, in order to reveal things given to you by Durga, information.
To tell you about how things work, really.
Right.
How... Say, if you look at Sanskrit, now I know a bit about Sanskrit. I talked about those 4 different levels of, different interpretations of each story. In Sanskrit, there's one called Vaikari. That's the one about the senses. That's the ordinary, everyday world. There's another one called Madhyama, which is the level on which the normally surface mind works. There's one called what is it? Pasha. Can't think which one. Something like that. And the last one's called Para, which is the transcendental, which we're all part of, really, but have been cut off from.
Like oneness.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So, I mean, years later now, how are you coping with this concept?
Concept? Well, the thing is that, well, when it first happened, I knew that I had to worship her in some way. Okay, right. I didn't know how. I know some people say you have to light a flat candle or something like that. Anyway, she actually told me how to do it. One day, I pushed on my computer, and this site came up with a Durga puja book on it. And I'd never heard of the site before. I don't know how it came there, but it came there. And so I sent...
We're going to have to get into that after the break. Hello there, welcome back to Gardiner's World, where we're on a trip of a lifetime with Tony Butcher on Yoga Consciousness in Ancient Mystery Religions. And we've been talking about Durga, this female goddess that you're in contact with.
Yeah.
Life-changing experience that you had in India. And in the book, you go through some of the old stories, like Cinderella.
Yeah.
And you say that they're in code.
Yes, right.
Could you enlighten us?
Yeah. Well, first of all, more modern, in, let's say, early 20th century, was a lady who looked into the stories of Cinderella, for example, and because we would think it's just a Western story, but it's all around the world. And she gave up when she got to 700, for example.
Right. 700 variations on the story of Cinderella.
Well, say, for example, the stories are the same, but they change according to the geographical place. So, in the West, she'll go to a courtly ball. In China, she'll go to the market. In Scotland, she'll go to the church.
Okay, yeah.
So whatever the geographical thing, it follows the sort of went to the country, you could say. Yeah. Now, I reckon one time these stories, this kind of thing was all around the world, and these stories were carriers of a secret knowledge that they passed on orally from one tradition into another.
Oh, you know, great, yep.
And the academics today will tell you that Cinderella has got a certain code number that, and it's about a lady who has fallen on hard times and somehow gets better, but it's much more than that. I found out, as part of my relationship with Durga, and by, again following up some things from the Far East, that all the people in this story are actually parts of our psyche. So if we look at the modern story of Cinderella, we'll be following somebody called Charles Perrault, who rewrote the story in about the 18th century. Now, he invented the pumpkin that turns into a coach, and the frogman that turns into liverymen, and all this kind of stuff.
Right.
The mice that turn into horses, the whole lot.
That's all a modern-day invention.
Yeah, very imaginative, but a long way from what it was.
Right.
So the original story was that the father went to Cinderella and the two sisters. Cinderella is a spiritualized part of the mind called the buddhi in India, and the two ugly sisters aren't actual sisters, they are the mind and the senses. They're different parts of our being. And the father is actually the ego. Now, the ego follows whatever our intentions are. And so it's natural that if the senses want something, like in the story, it's beautiful dresses for one, and jewelry for the more canny one, because it keeps its value more. But in the real story, you know, one I use anyway, it says that when he asks Cinderella, she says, I want a sprig of the first tree that knocks your hat off. In other words, I want some branch of traditional wisdom that's going to give me proper happiness tonight, not these fleeting things of like the mind and senses will give me.
Yeah.
And,
so there's kind of a symbolic code.
Yeah, that's right, exactly that.
Sounds very Egyptian.
Yeah, yes. He said it starts off with ancient Egypt, but the same thing is found in India today. You know, in some parts. So I don't know where it started, but according to the only thing I found, they thought the mystery religions. Mystery doesn't mean mystery as we mean it. It means initiate. Initiate religions. Okay, mystery is not some suspense drama of how we interpret it. It's really an initiate.
Yeah.
And so going back to the story, so when the father brings back the goods, the dresses for the senses, for the jewels for the mind, and this sprig or this technique for Cinderella, she plants in her mother's mind. Now her mother was said to have died. What it really means is the mother died from our awareness. She's not dead at all. So
we're unconscious of it.
Yeah. So we plant the seed, this tradition, this mantra, whatever it is she practices, and she practices it 3 times a day. Funnily enough, that's the same time as, say, people in the Far East, say India, for example, practice their meditation. Dawn, noon, sunset. Now, after a while, this tree grew. This tree is the spinal column and the brain, of course. And after a while, a couple of birds come and perch in it. Now, these birds are symbolic of we call now devatas or angels, and they are the people who supply Cinderella with a lovely dress for the ball. But the lovely dress is not a lovely dress really, and the ball is not a ball in the way we think of it. The ball is linked when you make proper contact with a transcendent. It makes it a living reality every day, for example.
Right.
And you have to symbolise it by something, and the easiest way is to put some form of dress. And even if you had, in those days, from the ancient mystery religions, they would have some kind of dress for this initiation. I've left a bit out, actually, because before this happens, in the actual ancient mystery, round about February, they would call it the newly sown. And that's when people would get a technique like this, a branch of ancient wisdom. And it's only in September or something like that the real initiates that got the higher state of consciousness would have his initiation in a kind of cave,
right.
You know.
Yeah.
But that's what it's all about. And so when Cinderella goes to the ball the first time and dances with the prince, for example, she falls in love with him, all that kind of stuff, it's really, she's having a proper relationship now with the transcendental area of life. And it's become real to her. And as when you start to meditate, you keep going to this transcendent all the time, and what it does, it's like a catalyst that changes your brain a bit, quite a lot, actually fundamentally. And so it leads you into a fifth state of consciousness called cosmic consciousness. And that would be the first ball you should go to. So it wouldn't be on 3 consecutive days. It would be quite a period between each time, you know.
Yeah.
In the story, it seems like 3 days. And the next one, that's when the mind is totally spiritualized, you could say, or the mind is fully developed. Now, but when after that happens, there's another level of evolution after that. And this is when the senses get refined as well, so that the eyes can see divine beings, the ears can hear divine sounds, you can touch things, you see, and that's called God consciousness.
Right.
And finally, like a final trip to the ball, the third one, would be unity. When you see yourself, you are the same as everything else. You are the universe is you. Mm-hmm. There is no difference. In fact, before I started to meditate, it's what got me into all this stuff. I had a fleeting experience of that. I was in Regent's Park in a teacher training college and going for a walk. I should be at lecture. That's beside the point. And suddenly, I could feel, I felt one with everything. Although I had shoes, I could feel the grass growing beneath my feet. And I felt some tree about 100 yards away actually connected with my right forearm. And you felt such peacefulness, such bliss, that you couldn't not believe in God after this. It's impossible. Don't matter how you saw God, or a man, woman, whatever. The fact is, there's definitely something that holds all this together, whatever we call it, and it's fantastic, you know.
You were still a teacher at the time of all this?
Yeah.
And did you express any of this at school?
No.
No. Did it change anything at school?
Yes, it did. I gave up my job as headmaster for a start.
So you were a headmaster?
For a time, yeah, about 7 years. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, yeah, for several weeks. Well, actually, my inner self was telling me to go. My head was saying, no, you're getting a good salary, you want to stay here, mate. You've got a kid, children, and mortgage and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But the heart was saying...
A lot of people recognise that.
Yeah, no, say no, you've got to go, and, you know, and in the end I did go. And I've never reached to save the money, but probably it was worth it, because, you know, you've got to be in touch with yourself, really, because everybody's trying to impose something on you that is not you, isn't it? Aren't they, really?
I can relate entirely. The job before the present one that I have was extremely well paid, so...
Yeah, I know.
I gave all that up too, so I can understand that. But, I mean, I've got some notes down here about Maharishni's system of consciousness-based education. What's all that about?
Well, I'm interested in that because I've been a teacher for a long time. Well, funny enough, I'd learnt TM, Transcendental Meditation, well, I said this, only partly spiritual. I had that experience that got me into it, looking at that sort of thing. But I used to go home from school absolutely whacked out, tired out. And I had lots of interest, and I hadn't got the energy to do anything, to sit like a cabbage and watch TV or something, you know. And so I learnt this, and I found that in 20 minutes, I could be completely refreshed when I got home. Yeah. So just doing it twice a day, morning and evening, it seemed to make a big difference to me, and it did. And it also gave me lots of ideas about teaching and this sort of thing, all things I wanted to do.
Did it have some involvement in behaviour disturbed children?
Oh, yeah. Well, one day, I went to this headmaster, and I said, well, look, we're just highly paid baby minders, really, aren't we? You know, we've got, you know, we've got adolescents here, but in fact, we're not really doing much with me, are we? You know, we keep them quiet all day, and they don't do much work, nothing much happening. I said, I've got something that's really worked. Anyway, he let me talk, and he thought I'd shut up after a while, but I didn't. And so he called a deputy, and he said, Richard, he said, what do you think about this thing that Tony's talking about? And he said, it sounds pretty way out to me, he said. He said, but I'll tell you what, he said, I'll try it. And if it works, then we go for it. If not, we forget all about it. And I said, that's fair.
That's a good answer.
And he said, so he learned, and he's going through a marriage. He was going through a marriage breakup at the time. And he learned, and he said he had a fantastic experience first time. And he went even more raving about it than I was. And so, of course, the headmaster could do nothing about it. And halfway along the line, we thought, well, we've got to do something with these kids. They just can't work together. Each one is against the other's throat. They come from a background that don't support each other. What we've got to do is to have some sort of shared experience where we all work together. So we took them on a youth hosteling we took them on a cycle ride for a week, several 5 days actually, and we'd cycle about 30 miles a day, and between us we'd do the cooking, to get the kids to do the spuds, and so everybody filled in. On the work journey, if anybody had a puncture, we would stop the bikes and we'd all help, you see. Not like they would just leave them to rest and ride off, because that's their way of life. Yeah. This is the idea. And they twigged that either one of us or the other of us went and disappeared for 20 minutes, and the other came back, and then the other disappeared, you see. And they said, what's happening? And we said, well, we're going to meditate. And we didn't like talking about it first. And they said, well, what is it then? And we said, well, you know, after a hard day's cycling, we're a lot older than you, we can thrash you at football, don't you? How do you think that is? We need the energy. And then they said, well, we know you're only joking. We're riding along talking about this sort of thing, and they'd say, well, would it help me by my behaviour? Would I lose my temper so quickly? Would it help me learn? Yeah. And it started to come from them, and we couldn't stop it, really. And so we had this introductory talk come to the, for the parents, and we raised money through jumble sales and that, and so 25 learned. And the school was a changed place. Because a school for behaviour disturbed children is like a battleground, really. Yeah. There's graffiti, there's breakage everywhere, you know, fights. You got, you know, if you're given a history lesson, whatever lesson it is, whatever happens, it's like a road accident. You have to go to that. Forget the lesson, you know, because someone's going to get hurt otherwise, you know. And to actually go and give a lesson without anything happening, you know, it's actually amazing, you know. And this is what's happening. And
so kind of the moral of the story is to set up meditation centres in all the prisons of the world.
That'd be good. That'd be good. That'd be good. Yeah. And well, the thing is, we almost lost our job about it because the headmaster hadn't told the local authority what we're doing. Right. And so this deputy head and I wrote this interim summary of what what we've done, how we set it up, the scientific tests we'd done with the educational tests we'd put the children through. And sent it to after about 3 months. And we said we're going to review it after 6 months and a year. And if it's accepted, then NFER, it's the Nuffield Foundation of Educational Research, they'd do up to the big one, you see. Well, the Director of Education went absolutely mad, because you know what local authorities are like? They won't step out of line unless everybody else is doing it. Even if it doesn't work, they spend all their money wasting it, really. Like we were just childminders. They don't mind paying us for childminding, but they don't actually, are scared of something that actually works. It's amazing, really, when you think about it. Anyway, that's... so they just got us on some technicality saying it's a breach of contract or something. And
so has all of this helped your life?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Where do you think you'd be if you hadn't contacted Durga and
learned
the art of meditation?
Probably drinking art, I expect.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Would you recommend meditation to everybody?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah?
Definitely, yeah.
Even people who perceive themselves to be pretty well balanced?
Yeah, because there's so much about us. We only go what's... Your other lady was talking about subconscious, but there's even beyond the quantum, you know, they go to transcendence beyond the quantum, for example. You get knowledge from that. You can get total knowledge. Going back to the ancient mystery religions, they reckon every person was really a composite of two. There was the inner genius and the outer personality. Nothing that's properly true. Well,
I personally think that there's a whole world of things in the Hindu religion and traditions for the West to learn.
Yeah, I do.
And you know, what you've written, Yoga Consciousness in Ancient Mystery Religions, by Tony Butcher, is certainly one of those works that people should get hold of and see for themselves.